So I recently have capped, well, a couple weeks ago now, Dragon Invasion on level 31. Max damage is 2 billion. I can actually auto it now, which is why it's a good thing that these guild bosses showed up. Scratch that itch a little bit. Now, there's a lot of way in guild bosses are a lot like Dragon Invasion, but there's some differences too. So there's some differences in the strategies as well. I know that video of the sprites and stuff may have been like the best video ever fucking made, but I know some of y'all need your math and strategy fixes, so we got graphs and all that sort of shit here. So guild bosses and DI have enough in common that generally your best group is going to be your DI group with some minor adjustments. And for some bosses, actually major adjustments. Now, if you happen to have an expensive melee build for DI, that might serve you better in guild bosses because of a mechanic, but we'll get into the differences later. First, the ways in which they are very much the same. Well, first, I should probably point to the button up here. A lot of people don't see. Each boss has 1 to 3 unique skills to itself, and a lot of them, the skills don't work, which is, there's a few videos worth of material here. But they all have this right here, Ruin's Blessing. This is the same mechanic as Dragon Invasion, where percentage hit point attacks don't work. They instead are based on a function of attack times 10, which means percentage attack abilities. 1-mans are more likely to be better than 9-mans. Like Giant used to be meta. Galu Giant used to be meta for DI because a single Giant has way more attack to multiply by 10 than a bunch of 9-man. But that's all been outscaled long ago for DI, and it's the same here. So percentage attack, percentage HP attacks you just want to ignore. Immune to all crowd controls. That's kind of like the way Black Dragon is immune to spells. Like if you Earth Arrow, it doesn't hurt him at all, but it'll still stun him. Some crowd controls still, they don't work, but they still apply side effects. For instance, in Dragon Invasion in here, the Ice Elemental's Ice Wall, it doesn't freeze them, but as long as they're standing in it in Ice Elemental Awakened, then you'll get the DRR from it, or the reduced tenacity from it. This last part here, when the Ruin Guard takes a critical hit, its unit damage and unit damage reduction will both be increased. It doesn't say by how much, doesn't say how many, if there's a limit to the stacks. And this is why a melee build, if you have a bunch of 1-man units, obviously they're not going to be critting as much. So a melee build might be preferable if you have one strong enough. I did fool around a little bit with it, but my Sharpies destroy anything else I can do, despite the fact that they're critting like crazy and stacking up damage reduction on them. This results to another similarity with DI in that your damage starts out much higher in the first part of the fight and gets down lower. The reasons for it are slightly different, but we're talking about how they're similar. So you do more damage in the beginning than towards the end. It doesn't say it here, but defense reduction does not work here like in Dragon Invasion. And units that are bugged, for instance, some units, their percentage HP attacks don't work in Dragon Invasion, even though they're supposed to not do much, but they're supposed to do something. That kind of transfers over here. I'll show some examples of that as well. Like Dragon Invasion, it's a single target that's stationary. Doesn't do, some of them do damage to you, but most of them, for the most part, don't do a whole lot of damage to you. When they do have damage, their skills, a lot of them have true percentage max HP damage, which makes it scale. But again, a lot of these don't work, and we'll get into that. Like DI, there's a damage cap. It's 1.8 billion until level 31, then it goes up to 2 billion. Here it is 3 billion, or 2999999. That does not count boosts you get from guild or from the missions. Also, like Dragon Invasion, the fights are 90 seconds long. Another similarity they have with Dragon Invasion is in order to quit the fights without it counting, you have to hard close the game. Luckily, walking around in here does not take movement points, so because you'll have to walk back if you close the game out to escape from a run. But now for the differences, and there are some significant ones. For starters, the number one biggest thing you can do to improve, to do better here than you do in Dragon Invasion, you probably can, I can't, but most anybody can, is you can use Mercenaries. And this can be really helpful. Now, Mercenaries have basically just been gold revenue for a while, since everybody's done with Conflux. So real quick, just explain how... Now, the way Mercenaries work. Your emblems stay with the Merc, but your roster power does not. So if somebody has a slightly stronger marksman than you, your marksman will probably do better than merking out theirs because of the lack of roster bonuses. However, I've had people tell me that using my marksman mercenary doubles their score. Let's see here. So my marksman, max talent, max potential, max weapon level, but he's only 5-star. I'm getting there. These goddamn bows running out. He's a dope ass marksman. He does double my elves now at damage. Another side benefit is the emblems come with it, so you don't have to fucking switch your emblems. So that's great right there. That's easy peasy, wham bam, grab it and go. You can also mark out a support unit. It's nightmare. See, mine's only 3/3. As long as you got it, this ability here, you just need to have it unlocked. It doesn't scale. 2% DRR on every attack, up to 15 stacks. Now, they only last 10 seconds, so they get cleared by the dragon silences, but for the most part, that's not going to be an issue here in guild bosses. Then it can get extra stacks if you have it 3-star awakened. That's a lot of DRR, and it's stacking on attacks, and he's stacking DR on getting crit. So for a while, that's once that caps. I don't know what the cap is on the number of stacks they can have for damage resistance. There might not be one, but this obviously will cap eventually. So if you don't have one of those, that's going to be a significant boost to your damage. If your Sharpies are decent, you're probably better off getting a Nightmare or another really strong support unit as a mercenary. Unless you're the top number 1 DI scorer, and even if you are the top number 1 DI scorer for your guild or even your server, there might be, a particular unit of yours that's weaker than someone else's. So mercenaries, be sure to use them, and also be sure that yours are available, that are useful, and let everyone in your guild know. So, as I'm sure you've noticed, finally actually doing a fight here. This is a run with my DI team. We'll take a look at the scores here. Like I said, my marksman does a lot more damage than my elves. My marksman had 3.809 billion total and 1.044 billion actual damage. Elves had 2.502 billion total and 506 million actual. And what I'm really looking at here is the mitigation percentages. So 27.4% of the marksman's damage got through, 20.2% of the elves. So I got to thinking, I originally tested the cav weapon when it first came out, but now that my marksman is doing double my elves damage, I thought 300 penetration for castle might make cavaliers worthwhile now. Like, it changed my buff spell. Having my marksman that much stronger than my elves makes mirth more worth the while because I don't have a 5-star paladin. And because I'm not auto fighting, especially since you can't adjust the speed here, there's going to be variances in my damage because I'm not going to buff everybody at the exact same time and get them all perfect, which will result in variances in total damage. But the ratio of total to actual is affected by the DRR in the pen, not the buffs. So what I'm expecting to find here in this test is that the marksman's total to actual ratio improves quite a bit from the penetration, and the elves would be a little bit lower because the Black Knight with Lord Hard Global does 30% DRR for the first 30 seconds, which is before the boss has DR stacked a bunch from crits, so I didn't think it'd matter that much. But surprisingly, my marksman's total to actual actually went down a little bit from 27% and changed to 26.3%. And of course the elves lost a little over 2% because they get no benefit from the calves. But even for the marksman, apparently 300 penetration for the full fight isn't as good as 30% DRR for the first 30 seconds. So I thought, let's test out my new 3-star woke cow. 3-star woke does 20% DRR the whole time. I figured 20% DRR the whole time has got to be roughly as good as 30% DER for the first third of the time. From his first star awaken, he gives everyone 200 penetration. I believe it's 10 out of every 18 seconds. I'll pull the skill up here. And it was an improvement for both the marksman and the elves. You see here I got up to 30.6% total actual ratio for marksman and 22.4% for the elves. So I was kind of surprised. And also bear in mind, this is testing only their efficiency as a support for the Sharpies. It's not testing damage they do on their own, which the BKs do solid damage, and the cow, of course, has a chance to proc a bunch of damage. So the next day I went to try it in Dragon Invasion, and this is right after the run I showed at the beginning of the video where I capped damage. And you can see here I'm not quite going to cap damage, so the Gorgon is not better in DI. So now we need to determine, even though your damage starts out high and goes lower in both, it's for different reasons. And therefore, different units and stats have a slightly different benefit. So in order to illustrate that, what I did here, first it was Dragon Invasion, and now it's a guild boss. I'm running through with my normal lineup, but not casting any spells. Because I want to track changes in damage per second, but not because of frenzy or stuff like that, but because of the unit skills and whatnot. So then after I did that, I went back and slowed the recording way down, and the exact frame that the seconds tick in 3-second intervals. So I went through, and at exactly every 3 seconds, I recorded total damage, and then I would find the difference from the last interval, and I meticulously wrote all that down, and I even made line graphs for you guys, because I'm fucking awesome, and you are welcome. You can see here, they both have a lot more damage in the beginning, but after the first third of the fight, the Dragon Invasion one has big valleys here. In fact, what I'm going to do here is remove the first 30 seconds of the fight. Look at how flat the guild, I mean, there's some fluctuations, but relative to Dragon Invasion with the silences clearing debuffs and whatnot, it's incredibly flat. So it'd actually be interesting to map on the buff cooldowns on here, as well as like which units are using which abilities. Maybe line up your frenzies with those boosts in damage. But the main point of me doing this here is to demonstrate that even though, most of your damage is done in the first 30 seconds in both fights, there are differences. So while Gorgon is not on my optimum team for DI, it is for guild bosses. And actually what I discovered, instead of replacing Black Knight with him, I replaced Manticore with him and did even better. And that leads me to another significant difference between guild bosses and Dragon Invasion. And this video is getting pretty long, but I just want to cover, while not all these bosses, none of them move, they do retain their unit class. So what we're watching right now is I cap damage with 33 seconds left. Using Manticore, I swap him out for the cow here, and this is against the Sea Elemental, which is a caster unit. I reached the cap much sooner, 46 seconds. I reached it 13 seconds quicker, which is like a sixth of the fight almost. And the reason for that is Manticore's primary use here, besides his weapon, is this skill right here. And by here, I mean DI. It's not useful against ranged bosses because it stacks DRR and then also tenacity reduction with an Awaken on melee, like the dragon, but on ranged caster increases everybody's crit hit. And we already have a ton of crit hit, and crit hits are increasing the enemy's DR, and the tenacity reduction against the melee is basically the exact same thing anyway. So Manticore is basically useless on half the guild bosses, or at least not anywhere near as useful as Gorgon. Now, on melee bosses, it's a lot closer. In fact, I believe on this one, Manticore actually caps a couple seconds earlier than the Gorgon. In other tests, the Gorgon has come out ahead on melee as well, but just a little bit. So it's a lot closer on melee because the Manticore is a lot more useful. Because of that stacking DRR. And DRR is king here because they clearly have more DR than the Azure Dragon. That's why the penetration pales in comparison to the damage resistance, even the 30% from the Black Knight that ends 30 seconds in. There are other implications to the ranged units, some of them being ranged units as well. For instance, Chargers are going to have way more crit hit and bonus crit damage because of talent potions. And there still is a lot more to cover. This is just a general overview. I haven't even gotten to the really fun and useful stuff like exceeding damage cap with the missions, or which bosses to kill and which order. It's the 3rd day of July right now, and we're on chapter 4. Or which bosses actually require different strategies, and testing of different bosses' unit abilities, because a lot of them don't work. Some of them that do, though, make them very difficult. But we're pushing 15 minutes here. So we're going to wrap it up here for now. Thanks for watching. Hit me up on Discord if you have any questions. And I hope this was helpful to some of y'all, and have fun slaying bosses.